Why is Gen Z having less sex than other generations?
A 20-year-old man swipes furiously at two different phones, his eyes darting between Tinder and Hinge. It's a race against time. He needs to find someone to have sex with that night. He has to. The phone pings. He has a match, and he's out the door to continue his no-holds-barred, orgy-like lifestyle. At least that's what parents and the media believe is happening. But in fact, reality has gone the opposite way. Adult Gen Zers are having less sex and staying virgins longer than any generation before them at their age. So, what happened? So, what's really going on behind closed doors? Or rather, what's not? We'll deep dive into the sexless generation in today's episode of The Infographic Show. Why Gen Zers are having less sex than other generations. These past couple of years, the media has had a strange complaint about Gen Z. Teens and college-age kids aren't having enough sex. Dubbed the Puriteen generation, Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, is gaining a reputation.
Hey everybody, my name is Sam, aka Sambucha, and I'm a YouTuber who makes variety content ranging from challenges to
For their supposed prudish attitude. Enough sex? Dubbed the Puriteen generation, Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, is gaining a reputation for their supposed prudish attitudes towards sex. But aren't they supposed to be the most sexually open and progressive generation? So which is it? Well, it turns out it's a little of both. For Gen Z, growing up meant being surrounded by sexual imagery and having instant access to porn, literally at the click of a button. 18-year-old high school student Lillian shares her perspective. A lot of heterosexual porn always felt graphic. There was always an element of violence to it, and I never truly felt like any of the women or AFAB individuals in it were enjoying it, she says. That was very disturbing to me. One 20-year-old blamed porn for also making real-life sex off-putting, describing her experiences thus far as meh to bad. She said her partners seemed to model their moves on porn, flipping me over every 2 seconds because they watch a lot of mainstream porn. No wonder she doesn't want to have sex again. It doesn't help that Gen Z is struggling with mental health a lot. UC Irvine College student Ivana Zuniga told the LA Times, "I've been really preoccupied with my studies, and I'm always stressed because of all the things I have going on. My libido is always shot, and I don't really ever think about sex." While Gen Z has popularized a more fluid sexual spectrum and a variety of identity labels, this cultural shift may, for some, be making them less open to sexual experiences than before. How? Well, let's dig into the data and find out. One study in California looked into the sexual habits of young adults over time. In 2011, 22% of both men and women aged 18 to 30, millennials, reported having no sexual partners in the previous year. By 2021, 33% of women and 43% of men reported having no sexual partners in the last year. And this trend isn't just some quirky California phenomenon. The U.S. General Social Survey looked specifically at men under 25, and the percentage who reported no sexual activity in the past year had jumped from 18.9% in 2000 to 30.9% in 2018. Another study found that Gen Z specifically reported less sex than millennials and Gen Xers. 25% of Gen Z adults said they have never had sex with a partner in their lives. Though rates of sexual activity are going down among both genders, there is a more pronounced difference with men, and a lot of people think it's a result of porn, loneliness, and lockdown. During the pandemic, people stuck at home alone turned to porn and online content for sexual satisfaction. Psychologist Fred Rabinowitz said young men are watching a lot of social media and they're watching a lot of porn, and they're getting a lot of their needs met without having to go out. The numbers paint a revealing picture. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, the percentage of women describing themselves as single edged up slightly from 32% in 2019 to 34% in 2022. But for men, the increase is far more dramatic, going from 51% to 63%. And it's not just because they're striking out. Only half of single men say they're even interested in casual or committed relationships, a sharp decline from 61% just a few years earlier. Many psychologists think this decrease in sex is reflective of something more serious, a decrease in overall human connection. Thanks to the influence of social media, online lifestyles, pandemic isolation, and helicopter parenting, Gen Z might be the loneliest generation thus far. As NYU psych professor Niobe Way says, we're in a crisis of connection. Disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from each other. And it's getting worse. And that may be why men are disproportionately affected. This is backed up by data. Back in the 1990s, just over half of men, 55%, reported having 6 or more close friends. By 2021, that number had dropped to just 27%, less than half of what it was a generation ago. Even more troubling, 15% of men now say they don't have a single close friend, a drastic rise from just 3% in 1990. While loneliness is affecting both men and women, with 61% of Americans overall feeling the effects, it does affect men more. Men also say they're less likely to get emotional support from friends unless they have close female friends. If friendships are difficult for Gen Z, dating, sex, and romantic relationships must be an even bigger challenge. The lockdown has also caused a big disruption to Gen Zers' sexual habits, in a way millennials and Gen Xers never had to deal with. It caught many of them in high school and college. Instead of navigating crushes at school or hanging with friends, they were stuck at home, limited to awkward interactions on Zoom, possibly the least sexy environment in the world. This period of isolation created a kind of suspended development for many Gen Zers. They became a little too comfortable with being alone and a little too scared of forming connections. Once again, men seem to have been more deeply affected. In 2021, a Match.com study found that 81% of single men said sex was less of a priority than it had been for them before the pandemic. Perhaps this explains why so many are turning to online alternatives like porn. For many, it feels easier, safer even, than taking the emotional risk of forming real-life human connections. But part of the problem is that Gen Z has had access to porn on a scale previous generations could not have imagined. Forget sneaking a Playboy out of dad's closet. Today's teens were exposed to some of the internet's darkest corners from a very, some might say, inappropriately young age. Surprisingly, coming across Blue's Clues fan fiction porn before you've even kissed someone